Okay, let's proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Fenter, before the long adjournment, you had confirmed that, as is set out in the first statement, you provided documents to Mr. Agrizi. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, at paragraph 16.3 of your statement, which appears in bundle T10, that is where you introduce the documents that you handed over to Mr. Agrizi.
I'm sorry, what page in T10?
Apologies,
or paragraph?
Chair. We're at paragraph 16.3 at page 8 of T10.
Okay.
What documents did you provide to Mr. Agrizi?
Proof of payments.
And who, in respect of whom, were these proof of payments?
Payments towards the legal cost of Mr. Gladi Mutseneng, and 3 payments to a company called Morocco Consultants, and a payment to a bank account EFG2.
Yes. Now, were these documents provided at your first meeting with Mr. Agrizi?
Yes.
And how did you manage to obtain these documents at your first meeting?
It was on my computer, and I had to print the documents which I handed over to Mr. Agrizi.
Who decided that these documents should be given to Mr. Agrizi?
Chair, I told Mr. Agrizi and Mr. Van Tonner at the time at Mr. Agrizi's house about the payments, and he requested me to print it, which I did, and I handed to him.
You had told them about these payments prior to the meeting where you were asked to make a statement?
If I remember correctly, Chair, I told them at the house.
On the day?
No, I'm just correcting myself. I could have told them prior to the meeting, yeah, because
Yes.
they knew about it. Correct.
Yes. I'm wondering whether anybody said to you, please bring the following documents, or whether you decided that you wanted to give him these documents on your own.
Chair, I had my computer with me, so it was easy to print from my computer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Now, Mr. Fenter, before you deal in detail with the documents that you say you provided, you, in your statement, then go to deal with circumstances that led you to eventually signing the first statement. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, can I refer you to, firstly, in terms of your first visit with Mr. Agrizi, did you sign the statement then?
No, I didn't at the time.
And before signing the statement, did you ever meet with Mr. Agrizi and Mr. Van Donner again?
No. Oh, yes. I met them at a restaurant in December, just before I flew down to my family for the holiday.
Yes, and who called this meeting?
Mr. Agrizi called me on various occasions between the date from when I visited his house up until that date. If I remember correctly, Chair, I decided to meet with the 2 gentlemen.
Okay.
Yes, and what transpired at this meeting with Mr. Agrizi and Mr. Van Donner?
Pardon me?
What transpired at this meeting between yourself and Mr. Agrizi and Mr. Van Donner?
At this meeting, Chair, I explained to them that I would sign the document after various threats via telegram messages that were sent to me by Mr. Agrizi. I decided to meet with the 2 gentlemen, and at this meeting, Mr. Agrizi showed me a flow diagram.
A what?
A flow diagram, which is in my affidavit.
Yes.
Yes, and in your understanding, what was the purpose of this flow diagram?
Mr. Agrizi explained to me that he's busy with negotiations with the Bosasa Group, African Global Group. He actually negotiated on behalf of the 3 employees who left the company for Bosasa to sorry, for Bosasa to cede one of the contracts, the DCS contract, to Mr. Agrizzi on behalf of the three gentlemen. And the flow diagram explained what would happen if they accept it and what would happen if they don't accept the proposal.
Yes, okay. And you say he told you that he was negotiating that Bosasa should cede one of the contracts
Yes, Chair.
to him?
He actually, it was on behalf of the three gentlemen who left the company, but it
Yes.
was also for his benefit.
Yes.
The flow chart that we can actually go to now actually explains that Mr. Agrizzi recommended that he would take over the contract into one of his own BE companies. So he would be part of this whole scenario.
Yes, okay.
Now, in pursuing some form of negotiation, did Mr. Agrizzi indicate what negotiation power, if one might refer to it as such, in entering into negotiations with Bosasa?
He did explain to me, Chair, that all the evidence that he accumulated, that's his ammunition that he would use in negotiating this whole thing, because the flow diagram also mentioned that he would hand over the documents should it be successful, the negotiations be successful, they will hand back the documents.
Did that mean that he would hand the documents to Bosasa?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So in using this flowchart or explaining it to you, did Mr. Agrizzi ever mention whether the documents that he had would be made of fabricated information or not?
That was never mentioned to me.
And in mentioning that he would hand back the documents, what would be his basis of handing back the documents?
Apparently, Chair, it was evidence that he accumulated, he and Mr. Van Toner and the whole team accumulated over a period of time of illegal activities conducted by Mr. Watson and the Bosasa Group.
Do you know which contract he wanted Bosasa to cede to him and his group?
Yes, Chair, it was the Department of Correctional Services contract. Mr. Agrizzi knew it off by heart. He actually, you couldn't tell him anything about it. He knew it perfectly well.
Yes, was that the so-called kitchen contract?
That's correct.
Okay. If I can just step back a little bit to the period between the date when you visited Mr. Agrizzi's house and you were asked to make a statement and the date when you met with them at a restaurant, you said that Mr. Agrizzi made various threats to you in between. Is that right?
Yes, Chair. He really wanted me to sign this affidavit.
Yes.
So he said to me that this flow diagram came into play as well. He explained to me that he's going to implement this plan and he would bring Mr. Watson down, and if I don't join them, I would be part of I will also be brought down.
Yes. These threats, now earlier on you said that the threats that he made to you on the day that you visited his house and you were asked to make a statement, you said that the threats that he used related to things that had happened which you wouldn't like to be exposed, but things that had actually happened. The threats that he was using now between the date of your visit to his house and the date of your meeting in the restaurant with them, were they along the same lines?
Same lines. It's just the contract and the way he would bring the company down that he added in order to put pressure on me, but the same threats.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, in explaining the flowcharts to you, what was the essence of Mr. Agrizzi's plan insofar as negotiating with Bosasa?
Can I refer to the flowcharts, perhaps?
Well, certainly. You have them annexed as PV21. That would be from page 29 to 34.
Chair, I just want to make a point that as I was not the creator of these documents, I won't be able to explain it in detail, but I can explain it to some extent that I understand
Yes,
it.
yes.
Okay. On the top left-hand side, it refers to the contract DCS.
Can we confirm which page you're on, Mr. Fenter?
It's PSV 30,
Yes,
page
30.
page 30,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Page 30, yes. The heading there is session of contract. It refers to the DCS contract. Mr. Gritzi was appointed, like I've said, by the three gentlemen to negotiate the exit packages on his behalf. Mr. Gritzi used his own company in the middle there, Malandela Criaris, to put the contract in that company. I also recall just underneath that, it's plus minus rand value per month paid over. What he meant by that is he explained to me that at the time, Bosasa was making about 2.5, 3 million rand profit per month. And also at the time, they were busy negotiating a price increase on the contract. And Mr. Gritzi was adamant that the Bosasa directors should have allowed him to do the negotiations. According to his calculations, should he be successful in his negotiations, he would negotiate a price increase which would result in a profit of about 12.5 million rand a month, he mentioned. If that's the price increase, and if they allow him to manage the contract. And he also mentioned that he would give Bosasa 30% of the profits. 30% of 12.5 million would have been more than that they were making at the time. So it would be a win-win situation for both parties. That's to the extent I can explain the first page, Chair.
And if we might continue, on page 31 is another flow chart. Do you confirm
Yes.
that?
Yes, that's correct.
And is this the essence of Mr. Agrizi's negotiation that you were explaining?
Yes, correct.
As I see it, the flow chart has what I can call two streams or two flow streams. Is that correct?
Correct.
On the left side, what is written there? On the first stream on the left side.
That's successful.
And what is your understanding of that?
If they're successful, they will conclude an exit. Session of the contract will take place, and they will hand over documents. As easy as that.
And these are the documents that you earlier referred to that you said Mr. Agrizi was in possession of.
Correct.
These are the documents that Mr. Agrizi would use in negotiation.
Correct.
And on the right-hand side of that flow chart, what is written there?
Unsuccessful.
What then follows?
If it's unsuccessful, it would trigger the social media, it would trigger something with the banks, it would trigger the auditors. Underneath the auditors, it refers to IRBA, politicians, Institute of Chartered Accountants. You would use all of this against Bosasa.
Now-
Should it be unsuccessful?
Pardon?
Should it be unsuccessful, that's what would happen. He would implement that as part of his plan.
And what was your understanding insofar as Mr. Agrizi would trigger social media, banks, and auditors?
Mr. Agrizi always threatened by leaking information to the media, and I think that's what he meant by that.
Can we then turn to the page that follows, page 32?
Chair, on this page, the gentleman was concerned as to where the money would come from to pay the three gentlemen there, just Mr. Leon van Tonder, Frans Forster, and Andries Forster on the top left-hand side.
Before you proceed, Mr. Fenter, sorry to interrupt you. Do you confirm that on page 32 is yet another flow chart?
Yes.
Yes, please proceed.
They were concerned that where would the money come from. They also said that it would be a team payment, not payments to each individual. They negotiating via Mr. Brian Bibak a team payment for the three gentlemen. And then it also makes mention there, return information and files, anti-whistleblowing, anti-compete signed. That's just the positive influence this would have if it would be successful.
Would that be the payments?
The payments, yes. Although they were very concerned as to where the money will be coming from. That's why they were very interested in a contract.
Yes. And on the following page, on page 33, do you confirm that that is also a flow chart?
Yes, correct.
What is the title of that flow chart?
Non-governmental expose. It also refers there that various leaks to the media, carte blanche, social media, online media. Then it also refers to that questionable business interest to the DA, political parties, to the banks, and also exposing the politicians for the cameras installed at the houses, exposed for VAT and tax, exposed for payoffs and bribes. So this is really, thinking back now, this plan actually was carried out. I think if we all, with hindsight, if you think now back what happened over the past months.
Yes.
Yes, and on the following page, on page 34, what appears on that page?
That's the ramifications for Bosasa, the African Global. It would result in public scrutiny, it would result in exposure, criminal directorate. That's the consequences.
Now, under public scrutiny, what is stated under that subtopic?
Future business and reputational harm, massive media interest.
Do you have an understanding of what that means?
Not really, but thinking now back as to what happened over the last few months, I think most of this happened.
And the second subparagraph, which says they're exposed, what is written underneath that?
Parliamentarians, blacklisting for tenders, SARS investigation, loss of existing business, loss of banking facilities. We saw this happening.
And the third subtopic?
Criminal, tax evasion, collusion and bribery, money laundering, racketeering.
And the fourth subtopic?
Directorate, sequestration, blacklisting, criminal records, no future of...
Okay.
Please proceed.
Thank you.
And the fifth subtopic?
Related, negativity to family, interests such as Rollstone, Sunworks and Wind Farm.
Now, do you wish to make any further comments on this page?
No further comments.
Now, in your interaction with Mr. Agrizi about these flowcharts, you've earlier testified that he at no point mentioned the falsification of information in entering into negotiations with Bosasa or Mr. Watson. Is that correct?
Correct.
How did you come to be in possession of these flowcharts?
Mr. Agrizi handed this to me. He wanted to explain to me at that meeting what's going to happen shortly after that meeting, and I had to make my decision whether I sign that affidavit or not. And then after I've seen this, I decided that I would sign it.
So when did you sign the second statement?
Before you deal with that question, having been involved in the auditing of Bosasa's taxes, finances, are you able to indicate about how much percentage the kitchen contract was of Bosasa's revenue? In other words, this contract that Mr. Agrizi wanted from Bosasa to be given to him and his group, how much of a loss would it be to Bosasa to lose it to him?
Chair, they mentioned at the time that they were making about 2.5, 3 million rand a month. But in comparison to the overall profits, I can't say.
Oh, okay.
Difficult to calculate it now.
Okay, thank you.
Can we return to page 30 of the bundle? The document that is titled Session of Contract.
Yes.
At the very bottom of the flow chart, just under the pagination, that reference to advantage, do you understand what that is about?
If if I read it, and the way I understand it, is that it would be to the benefit of BOSASA that, from a reputational point of view, due to the bad media publicity, Mr. Gritzi believed that you could turn this around. BOSASA would get an annuity income for doing nothing because Mr. Gritzi would be managing the contract. The rest, minimized risk, take care of all potential flare-ups. I'm not too sure what he meant by that.
And the last one?
Risk factors, lost in process, system crash. Not too sure what he meant by that.
That's fine. You were then speaking about you eventually signing the statement. When did you eventually sign the first statement?
Mr. Gritzi emailed the statement to me in December. Chair, I just need to make sure, otherwise I might get my dates wrong again.
Was it 18 December?
18 December.
That's 2017.
That's the 18th of December. I've signed the document and I scanned and emailed it back to Mr. Gritzi.
Now, you mentioned that the statement was emailed to you by
Yes.
Mr. Gritzi. So you didn't sign it at the second meeting?
No, I didn't sign it. He explained it to me, the flowchart and what he's about to do in December, January. And then he asked me, will you sign the statement? And I said yes, and so he emailed that to me in December.
On the day when you had visited Mr. Agriz's house and you were asked to make a statement, did you take the statement with you? Did you take a copy thereof with you on that day?
Chair, I've printed so many documents at Mr. Gritzi's house. I can't remember whether I've emailed him the draft statement at that time and whether I've printed that and handed it to him. I can't remember.
Between the date of that visit to his house and the date of the meeting at the restaurant when you agreed to sign, had you had the statement with you? In case you didn't take it on the day you visited his house, was it sent to you in the meantime before that meeting or not?
No, I haven't seen it again up until then. I can't recall seeing it again. I had it with me, and I can't remember. Chair, I'm not too sure.
Yes, and at the meeting at the restaurant, did Mr. Agrizi bring the statement with you?
No, Chair. No.
So you didn't see it on
No,
at
it was
that
a general
meeting?
discussion, and he
Yeah.
showed me the flow diagram.
Yeah, you just discussed without examining the statement.
Yes, I had to make a decision there that whether I'm going to sign it or not.
Yeah.
And then he said, okay, he will email it to me.
But before you left his house on the day you visited his house, had you finished preparing the statement that you were prepared to, that you wanted to make?
No, Chair.
You
I
had not
haven't
finished?
weren't finished.
Okay. So as you were agreeing at this meeting to sign the statement, obviously you knew what the statement looked like when you left the house. That's the statement you were agreeing to sign.
Yes, Chair. But later on, when he emailed me the statement, I did see that he amended the statement. But I went ahead and I signed it.
Yes, okay. Ms. Mlafe?
Thank you, Chair. Now, these flowcharts that you say Mr. Agrizi gave to you, why did he leave them with you?
I can't remember why he left it with me, but he wasn't scared leaving information with me. I don't know whether we're going to cover the other. In my statement, I also referred to a photograph I've taken of a plan that he drew on one of our boards at the office when he came to see me in early November. The point I want to make is that he wanted me, Mr. Gritzi wanted me to take a picture of that drawing to show it to Mr. Watson. So he wasn't scared of leaving documents with me.
Yes, and that is exactly what you cover in the paragraph that follows. And this, at your meeting at your office with Mr. Agrizi, the diagram, as you refer to it, or flowchart that he drew, was it in your office?
Yes, Mr. Agrizi, when I looked at the date when the picture was taken, it was on the 10th of November 2017. Mr. Agrizi and Mr. Van Donder came to visit me at my office. They came to see me. And during that meeting, Mr. Agrizi did this drawing on the board.
Yes. Now, this drawing on the board, was it in essence similar to the flowcharts that he left with you?
It was also a plan. Mr. Agrizi, that's his way, how he expressed or explained himself to people. He even had a drawing board in his office at Bosasa when he was still employed there. That's his way of explaining and expressing his thoughts to people.
Yes, and that picture that you make mention appears at page 35. Chair, we needn't go there unless the chair wants to deal with it. But in this diagram, you've confirmed that it's basically, in essence, the same purpose as the flowcharts. Do you have any inclination of thought as to why he would want you to know this information?
He constantly explained to me what he was busy with. He really tried to, I think, persuade me to sign this statement, because after this meeting, we went to his house, if I've got my dates correctly, and that's where he wanted me to sign the statement. I think it was a preempt to the date we would meet to sign the statement or draft the statement. He actually wanted me, explain to me what he's busy with, and I should be part of this whole come clean exercise against Mr. Watson.
Now, when you say after the meeting, you still talk about the meeting at the restaurant? Or is it another one?
Chair, this was at the meeting at my office.
At your office?
On the 10th of November, when he actually drew this drawing on the board at my office.
Oh, what was the date when you visited his house and you made that statement?
It was somewhere in November.
Early November?
It was early November, I'm not too sure.
Oh, and you met in your office on the 10th of November?
Yeah, that date, I've got the date of that, yeah.
And was that meeting at your office prior to the meeting at the restaurant or after?
No, that was prior to the meeting at the restaurant. This was early November at my office.
Yes, okay, all right.
Yes. We will return to your further interactions with Mr. Agrizi, as well as Mr. Watson, whom you state to have interacted with. But I want to now deal with the documents that you stated to have handed over to Mr. Agrizi. The first document you said related to the payment of legal fees of Mr. Claudi Musuneng. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, can we refer to Exhibit S8 at page 925, paragraph 10? Can you please read that paragraph into the record?
Sorry, where do I find that document?
Exhibit S8.
S8, okay.
So that would be the first statement that is separate from T10, which is before you. Yes.
S8,
Can you please go to page AA 925?
Okay, I'm there.
At paragraph 10, please read that paragraph into the record.
During the middle of August 2017, Gavin Watson approached me to assist him to pay the legal cost of Mr. Claudi Musuneng. On 17th of August 2017, I received an invoice from Walter Jelle from Majavo Attorneys, proof attached. I've paid the total invoice amount of 1,187,656 rand and 82 cents in 2 installments. First payment of 600,000 rand on 20 August 2017, proof attached. Second payment of 587,656 rand and 82 cents on 21st of August 2017, proof attached.
Yes, are the contents of that paragraph correct?
That's correct.
You deal with that issue in your second statement in paragraph 34 of page 15 in T10 Is there further detail in respect of that payment that you would like to bring to the Chair?
No
I'm
further
sorry,
date.
where are you, Ms. Mlefe?
Pardon me, Chair. Paragraph 34, page 15 of T10.
Paragraph 24.
34, Chair. That is page 15.
Yes, okay.
Yes, on whose instruction was this payment made?
On instruction of Mr. Gavin Watson.
And you've confirmed the correctness of paragraph 10 in S8, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, can we refer to pages, annexure PV4 1, pardon me, and that appears at page 64, but more particularly page 65. What is that document at page 65?
It's a proof of payment.
And what is the date that appears on that document?
21st of August 2017,
And what is the amount that appears on that document?
600,000.
And who is the beneficiary recipient on that document?
Java Incorporated Trust Account.
And further down, what is the description cited on that document?
It refers to H. Mots,
Can you spell MOTS?
M-O-T-S.
Who provided that description?
Chair, I can't remember. Mr. Watson must have given it to me. Otherwise, how would they have traced or tracked that payment for the benefit of Mr. Gladi Mitseneng? I'm not too sure.
And from which account was this payment made?
This was made from Mioto Trading and Advisory Holdings.
Can we then turn to annexure PV2?
Is it PV42 or just PV2?
Pardon me, Chair?
Is it PV42 or is it just PV2? I think you said PV2.
My apologies, it's PV42.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
That appears on page 67.
It's the 21st of August 2017,
And what is the amount that is reflected there?
587,656 rand and 82 cents.
And who is the beneficiary?
Java Incorporated Trust Account,
And what is the description of that payment?
GH Mots,
And from which account was this payment made?
from Mioto Trading and Advisory Holdings.
Now, you have confirmed that you made these payments, correct?
Correct,
And this is through Mioto.
correct.
So how was this payment reflected in Mioto's books?
Chair, as Mioto wouldn't have the funds to do that, on instruction of Mr. Watson, he knew about this company. He said to me that, he called me and said to me, I want you to make a payment. And he actually gave an instruction for the money to be paid into Mioto's account, and I had to make the payments over to Majava Incorporated Trust Account.
You say Mr. Watson made an instruction for the money to be paid into Mioto. From which account was the money paid into Mioto?
I just want to look through my documents just to quickly confirm that.
You deal with this in paragraph 34 of your
34.
second statement.
It was paid from the account from a company called Lamazest.
Okay.
Yes, and in the books of Mioto, how was it reflected? What kind of expense, if it was reflected as an expense, was it reflected as?
No, it was just, it was an in and out, if I can explain it like that, because there was no purpose for that money to come in. There was no service rendered for that. So it was an inflow of a payment and paid out on behalf of Mr. Watson.
The company from whose account the money was paid, was it a Busasa subsidiary?
Chair, it's a company called Lamazest. We used to call it one of the Gavin Watson group of companies. Mr. Watson had a few companies of his own, of which his trust was the ultimate shareholder of these entities. So the money came from Lamazest into Mioto.
Is the answer that you don't know whether it is or it was a subsidiary of Busasa?
It's not,
It is
Chair.
not,
It's not.
yeah. But for all intents and purposes, was it Mr. Gavin Watson's company?
It's one of Mr. Gavin Watson's company.
One of his companies?
One of his companies, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Now, the payment that was it made by Mr. Watson personally or someone else? Into Miyato's account?
The two persons which has access to the bank account of Lamazest was the company secretary, Natasha Olivier. She also did all Mr. Watson's personal financial information. She would file it, she would handle it. She had access to the bank account. And also Lindsay Watson, the daughter of Mr. Watson, the two of them approved the payment from Lamazest.
Did you make use of any invoice when you were making these payments?
Mr. Watson did give me an invoice. I recall that see an invoice. Pardon me. It's a couple of pages relating to the legal expenses of Mr. Gladi Mitseneng, adding to 1.1 million. I recall seeing the invoice. That was, if I recall correctly, it was given to me.
Yes, and do you have possession of this invoice?
Not anymore.
The second payment that you referred to earlier was payment to Morocco Consultants, is that correct?
That's correct.
Can we turn to Exhibit S8, still on page 925, at paragraph 11.
Yes.
Can you please read the first 7 lines of that paragraph into the record?
During September 2017, Gavin Watson approached me to assist him and Sivian Dlamini to make 3 payments to Morocco Consultants Training and Development Pty Limited. Lindsay Watson prepared a consulting agreement between Mioto Trading and Advisory Holdings Pty Limited and Morocco Consultants Training and Development Pty Limited. Attached. No services have been provided as this is merely a front for other intentions.
Please stop there. The first sentence in that paragraph, is that correct?
That's correct.
And the second sentence, which deals with Lindsay Watson having prepared a consulting agreement between Mioto and Morocco Consultants, is that correct?
That's correct.
And the latter part of that sentence, which states that no services had been provided, as this is merely a front for other intentions, is that correct?
Correct.
Can you then read further from, in paragraph 11, starting from I had to, until the end, pardon me, until the end of that paragraph?
I had to make 3 payments of 450,000 rand each to Morocco Consultants. The first payment was made on 30th September 2017, proof attached. The second payment was made on 28th of October 2017, proof of payment attached. The final payment is only due by the end of November 2017. The agreement mentions that Morocco Consultants will provide and render consulting services to Mioto for a turnaround business strategy and to provide the necessary training in development to implement such.
Yes. Is the first sentence about the 3 payments correct?
Correct.
And is it correct that the first payment was made on the 30th of September 2017?
Correct?
Is it correct that the second payment was then made on the 28th of October 2017?
That's correct?
And is it correct that the last payment, it says that the final payment is only due by the end of November 2017, and as the statement was signed in November 2017?
Yes, correct.
Was that correct? Now, the agreement that was entered into between Miato and Morocco Consultants, what was the nature of that consulting agreement?
It was for a turnaround strategy. That was the wording in the agreement. No services were rendered, but that was the wording, Chair.
Yes, and you say that it is correct that no services had been provided, as this was merely, and I quote, a front for other intentions. So what were the other intentions?
To make a payment, 3 payments to this entity.
To make payments through the entity?
To this entity.
To make payments to who?
To Morocco. I don't know who's Morocco, and I don't know what the funds were for, but I was only instructed to make the payment. So other than that, I won't be able to elaborate. No services were rendered.
Do you know what happened to the payments that were made to Morocco?
No.
You don't. You also deal with this in paragraph 35 of, I think for ease of reference, I'll refer to it as the second statement on page 15 of Exhibit T10. The annexures that you attach in respect of these payments appear at pages 68, 70, and 72 as PV51, PV52, and PV53. Can we please turn to page 68? '69 rather.
What page number is it?
Page 69, Chair.
69.
Yes. Are you there, Mr.
I'm
Fenter?
there.
What is that document that appears at page 69?
It's a proof of payment.
And from whom is this payment?
It was paid from Miato Trading and Advisory Holdings
And on what date was this payment made?
on the 30th of September 2017,
And what was the amount paid?
450,000.
And the beneficiary name there?
Morocco Consultants.
Can you confirm the spelling that's provided there?
It's Moroka.
And this is different from what you have, is that correct?
Yes,
Because you refer to Morocco Consultants,
Morocco
correct?
Consultants.
Now, what is the description on that document?
It says Morocco.
And the reference number? Just under the description.
Oh, it says Miato.
Above the description, you have the branch name and the bank name. Can you confirm the bank name?
It's FNB.
And do you confirm that above the bank name is the account number?
That's the account number, yes.
Can we then go to the second annexure in this respect that appears at page 71 of your bundle? Are you there, Mr. Fenter?
Yes, I'm there.
What appears at page 71?
It's a proof of payment.
From who?
Miato Trading and Advisory Holdings.
And what is the date of that payment?
It's 28th of October 2017,
And what is the amount that was paid?
450,000.
And what is cited by the beneficiary name?
It's Morocco Consultants.
And what is the bank name cited there?
FNB.
And the reference number?
It's Miato.
And you confirm that an account number is cited there?
That's the account number.
Confirm the spelling, please, of the name of the recipient or beneficiary as appears on page 71.
It's Morocco, Moroka.
With an A.
With an A.
And the last annexure in relation to this payment appears at page 75. Do you confirm that that's, okay, can you confirm what document that is at 75?
It's a proof of payment
From whom is the payment?
It's Miauto Trading and Advisory Holdings.
What is the date of the payment?
It's 30 November 2017,
What is the amount?
450,000.
My apologies. Mr. Fenter, can you please go to 73, not 75?
I'm at 73.
Yes, I realize I skipped a page. Thank you. Just for the sake of the record, at page 73, can you confirm what document that is?
It's approved payment.
And from whom is the payment?
Miauto Trading and Advisory Holdings.
And what is the date of the payment?
30 November 2017,
What is the amount reflected?
450,000.
And what is cited as the beneficiary name?
It's Morocco Consultants.
Confirm the spelling, please.
Moroko.
And what is the description provided?
It says description is Morocco.
And the reference number?
It's Miauto.
And the bank name?
It's FNB.
And you confirm that an account number appears there?
Account name is same as the previous two.
You confirm that the account is the same?
Correct.
Thank you. Chair, there is investigation as to who Morocco Consulting belongs to, and there has been progress in that respect. There will be evidence provided. Mr. Fenter, the third document that you state to have provided to Mr. Agrizi is, as you say, an ABSA bank with the beneficiary named EFG2. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what was the description that you say was given?
The description that was given to me is social and development.
Can we refer to Annexure S8 at paragraph 12 of Annexure S8? Pardon me, at page AA926. Now I'm getting the pages confused. Page AA926, paragraph 12.
Okay.
Can you please read that into the record?
The entire paragraph?
Yes, please.
Paragraph 12, Gavin Watson approached me once again on 17th October 2017. He wanted me to assist him with a payment towards the purchase of a residential property for Ms. Lindy House. The amount was 2.5 million rand, and I had to consider the amount to be a loan. Ms. House insisted that a loan agreement be drawn up. Gavin Watson took me to Natasha Olivier and instructed her to pay 3 million rand from his personal account into Miauto Trading and Advisory Holdings Pty Limited bank account. It must be noted that I could not question Gavin Watson, as he would get upset with me, so I made the payments even though I knew that this was not correct. The 2.5 million rand was for the purchase of Ms. House's residential property, and 500,000 rand to EFG2 for an ABSA bank account. I was merely told it was for a foundation trust of Andile Ramaphosa, the son of the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa. I found this strange, but wouldn't dare question Mr. Gavin Watson. The 3 million rand was paid on, the 3 million was paid on 17 October 2017 into Miauto bank account.
Yes, now there's in essence two issues from what I see in this paragraph. The first sentence speaks about Mr. Gavin Watson having approached you, and the date given there is 17 October 2017. Is that true and correct?
That's correct.
And did he want you to assist with a payment towards the purchase of residential property for Ms. Lindy Hoos?
Yes.
And who is Ms. Lindy Hoos?
It was a close colleague that used to work at the Bosasa Group, who left and is currently still involved by doing the branding and marketing for the Bosasa Group, Chair.
And the following sentence there is that an amount of 2.5 million, the amount was for 2.5 million rather, is that correct?
That's correct.
And did you have to consider the amount to be a loan?
Yes.
And did Ms. Hoos insist that a loan agreement be drawn up?
Yes, she did.
What was the purpose of the amount being considered a loan?
Ms. Hoos wanted to purchase a property, and she insisted that she would repay the money. Therefore, it had to be regarded as a loan.
Okay, the sentence that follows states that Mr. Gavin Watson took you to Natasha Olivier and instructed her to pay 3 million from his personal account into Miato Trading. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is the entire sentence correct?
Correct.
Now, the sentence that follows states there that it must be noted that you could not question Gavin Watson as he would get upset with you, so you made the payments even though you knew that this was not correct. Is that statement true?
There's nothing untoward of that paragraph, Chair. Nothing wrong. I didn't include that paragraph. I mean, that was a loan, and the 500,000 rand, that I didn't know what it was for. Maybe that's what Mr. Gritzi, when he inserted that, what he tried to explain.
So are you saying that that entire sentence is incorrect?
As I understand you, what you are saying is the reference to something being not correct is where you have a problem, or not really?
Yes, Chair. The 2.5 million rand, there was nothing strange about it.
Yes.
The
yeah.
500,000 rand, I didn't know. That
Yeah.
As a result of that, I've asked Mr. Watson about it,
Yeah.
and he gave me the explanation.
Okay.
Yes. Now, in respect of what follows under that sentence, reference is made to 2.5 million being for the purchase of Ms. Kho's residential property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And further reference is made to an amount of 500,000 to EFG2 with an ABSA bank account. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And is it true that you were told that it was for a foundation?
Yes.
And is it true that, well, it says foundation / trust of Andile Ramaphosa? Were you informed as such?
Yes.
And that this was the son of the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa?
That's correct.
And is it true that you found this to be strange?
Yes. I was very surprised when he gave me the name. So I was surprised.
Why were you surprised?
Because I wasn't aware of what the relationship was. Why would Mr. Watson make a payment to the son of the Deputy President of South Africa?
Now, perhaps just to confirm, reference to the Deputy President, who is that?
That's Mr. Cyril
I
Ramaphosa.
suppose it's a non-brainer, but certainty is required. Chair. And the last part of that says that, but you wouldn't dare question Mr. Gavin Watson. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, at the end of paragraph 12, it says there that 3 million was then paid on the 17th of October 2017 into Miato's bank account. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you deal with this in your second statement at paragraph 36 of T10 on page 16. With reference to the payment by Ms. Olivier for purposes of payment for Ms. Lindy Kho's property, is there anything further you wish to bring to the attention of the Chair?
No, that's nothing, Chair.
And in respect of the payment by Miato into the ABSA bank account, which was referenced as being for beneficiary EFG2, can we turn to Annex PV6? And that appears on page 74 of your bundle. Are you there, Mr. Fenton?
I'm there, thank you.
What document appears on page 75?
It's approved payment.
And from whom was this payment made?
Miato Training and Advisory Holdings,
What is the date of that payment?
19th of October 2017.
And what is the amount of that payment?
500,000.
as you go further down, what is the beneficiary name cited there?
It is EFG2.
And if you move again further down, what is the payment / nickname cited there?
Pardon me?
When you move further down on the proof of payment,
Yes.
what is the reference made in respect of payment / nickname?
It says BOAG.
No. So let's go back to the beneficiary name. You say that that is EFG2.
That's correct.
What follows thereafter is RECIP number / item
Yes.
/ consolid. I assume that's consolidate. And nothing appears to the right side of that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Following that, what is the payment
I see.
/ nickname that is cited?
It says EFG2.
And what is the category / description that is cited there?
Non-categorized.
And do you confirm that there is an account number given there?
That's right.
And what is the bank name that is cited there?
ABSA Bank.
And what is the description that is given there?
Social and Development.
Now, the description that is given there, who gave that description?
Mr. Gavin Watson gave me the description. I asked him because I had to put it on the bank statement. So I had to ask him what it should be.
Yes, and beneath description is reference number. What is the reference number given there?
BOAG.
Can we then return to paragraph 36 of your statement under bundle T?
I'm sorry, where is the BOAG?
Chair, that would appear on page 75
Yes,
under reference number, which is the fifth item from the bottom.
Do you know what BOAG
No,
stands
Chair.
for?
No idea.
Do you know what EFG2 stands for, what the full name is?
No, unfortunately
And you
not.
didn't
Chair.
ask?
Never asked him. It was just
Okay.
given to me.
Thank you.
We then return to page 16 of your second statement, where you deal with this payment. You have just given evidence that you didn't know what the beneficiary name EFG2 referred to.
Yes,
And that the reference social development was given to you by Mr. Watson.
correct.
Now, do you have any other knowledge of the details surrounding this payment?
No further details.
And did you discuss this payment with anyone?
Only Mr. Gritzi.
And what was the nature of your discussion around the payment?
Mr. Gritzi, I just want to get that in my statement. Mr. Gritzi testified that he wasn't really interested, but he was very curious when I mentioned the name.
When who mentioned the name?
When I mentioned the name of this payment.
So your discussion with Mr. Agritzi, where he said in evidence that he wasn't very interested, and you're saying he, in fact, was, his interest surrounded the name. Which name?
Ramaphosa.
But where did you get the name from?
When I asked Mr. Watson who the payment was for, he said to me it's for the foundation of Andile Ramaphosa.
And you state that you don't know what the purpose of the payment was.
No, that's the limited knowledge I had about it.
And in Miyato's books, what did you reference that payment as?
BOAG.
Well, perhaps let me ask this differently. In Miyato's books, when you give details surrounding the payment, what did you specify the payment to relate to?
It was also just a payment coming in, payment going out, because there was no real purpose for that payment. No service rendered for that income or inflow of income or payment.
And was there any other payment that you made to this beneficiary, EFG2,
No, only one payment.
not from Miato, not from anyone else.
Yeah, no knowledge of any other payments.
And do you know whether the payment was pardon me,
The payment to EFG2, or the one that was referenced like that,
Yes, Chair.
that came out of the account of which company?
It came out of the account of Gavin Watson's personal account into Miaoto's account, and it was paid from there to the EFG2 account.
Which company of Mr. Gavin Watson?
It came...
The
no,
one
it
you
came-
mentioned earlier, Lazo,
No, Chair, it was coming from his own personal account.
or it came from his own personal account?
Yes.
Oh, so did he give you the cash, or
No,
you were
it-
running his account as well, personal
No,
account?
No, Chair, it was his personal account gets run by Natasha Olivier. She
Okay,
has access to his personal accounts.
yes,
In my statement, I did refer that he took me to her and
yes,
he instructed her to pay 3 million rand to
Yes.
Miaoto's account.
okay, no, thanks. Yes, I think I remember you say so in your statement, yeah.
Yes, Chair.
Okay. But the other payments, did they also come from his personal account?
No, the one payment came from Lamazest, one of the
Yes,
companies.
Yes, okay. Was that the one for Miss Lindy House?
No, his personal account was Miss Lindy Gous and
Yes.
the FG2 payment.
Yes,
And
yes.
if I remember correctly, the Gladi Mitseneng one came from Lamazest. Yes,
Yeah. So the two came from his personal account and one came from Lamazest.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
thank you. So the payment from Mr. Gavin Watson's personal account, did he make use of any particular reference, can you recall, in paying the amount into Miato's account?
I can't remember what the reference was, but I can certainly go and make sure about that. I can find out, Chair.
Yes, okay.
Now, in relation to Miato and the payments that are being made through Miato, these payments are being made without any detail of description in the books of Miato. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, always difficult because there's no service rendered, so it would be inflow of funds and outflow of funds, but no real transaction really.
So the payment would come, for example, from Mr. Gavin Watson's personal account into Miato's account, and you would make payments to the beneficiaries' accounts from Miato's account. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
At this stage, I'm sorry, at this stage, Miato remained a company belonging to a family member of yours,
Correct, Chair.
but you were still running Miato.
Yes.
Yeah, so there was no question of Miato being a subsidiary of Busasa.
Not at any time, Chair.
Yes,
No subsidiaries.
But through the understanding that you had with, among others, Mr. Agrizi, Miato was being used for certain payments by Busasa. Is that right?
Chair, yes, only those TRM invoices earlier
Yes.
mentioned,
Yes.
and then now for these
These
payments.
ones, yeah.
For these ones.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Still staying on Exhibit S8, at paragraph 13, which appears on page AA926, as well as paragraph 14, which appears as AA 927. Further reference is made regarding the transactions that you've just spoken about, the two transactions. Can you please read firstly paragraph 13 of Exhibit S8 as appears on page AA 926?
Paragraph 13 reads as follows. On the morning of the 6th of November 2017, Ms. Gous called and informed me that she is not going ahead with the transaction and I should repay Gavin Watson's money immediately. I recall she had a meeting with the attorney, Daryl Ackerman, about issues pertaining to Angela Gritzi, whom she was paranoid about earlier that morning. After meeting with the attorney, she instructed me to repay Gavin Watson's money, which I did. The attorneys who handled the property transaction was Louise Tonkin Incorporated, and the contact person was Joan Fourie. Attached are all the emails in this regard.
Do you know whether that statement is true or not?
That's correct, true.
Do you wish to bring anything to the attention of the chair in this respect?
No.
And on the page that follows, paragraph 14, at page AA 927 of Exhibit S8, can you please read that into the record?
I was instructed to pay the 500,000 rand, part of the 3 million rand payment which was received, to EFG2 into an ABSA bank account. Gavin Watson mentioned that the payment is towards Andile Ramaphosa's foundation, proof of payment attached.
Do you confirm the truthfulness of that statement?
Yes.
Now, in respect of the two payments that you've just given testimony about, do you wish to bring any other matter to the attention of the chair?
No, Chair. Nothing else.
And you've earlier confirmed that in respect of EFG2, no further payments were made, according to your knowledge, from Miyato or by yourself.
Yes, correct.
Can we then return back to your interactions with Mr. Agrizzi, and what then follows is, pardon me, your interaction with Mr. Watson. Please turn with me to paragraph 26 of your second statement that appears at page 12.
Yes, I'm there.
In paragraph 26, you make reference to events that took place in December 2017. Can you take the chair through that?
Yes. Chair, this actually refers back to that flow diagram. Mr. Andries van Tonder sent a text message to the audit partner of Darcy Herman Incorporated saying that there are a number of employees who would like to meet with him in respect of illegal activities by Mr. Gavin Watson and the Bosasa Group. That was part of the plan that was carried out per the flow diagram.
Yes, and do you know who the SMS or WhatsApp message came from?
Came from Andries van Tonder.
And do you know anything else around the details of that message?
They told me that they're going to send this message, text message, to the audit partner, just to scare Mr. Watson slightly, just to show him that they're very serious about this whole exercise.
But how would they be scaring Mr. Watson if the SMS was being sent to
Because
one of the audit partners?
They knew that the audit partner or myself would then contact Gavin Watson and inform him about this.
How did you come to know of this SMS?
They told me beforehand that they were going to send it out. And when they've sent it out to the audit partner, he forwarded the message to me as well. But I already knew about it.
Can you recall what exactly the SMS said?
The SMS, Chair, I'm not in possession of that SMS anymore, but we can actually get it from the audit partner. It refers to that that certain people would like to speak to the audit partner about illegal activities within Bosasa.
Yes, and do you know what became of that SMS?
The audit partner, obviously, he has to react. So that I recall that January, the audit partner would follow up with Mr. Van Tonder on this text message. But all that Mr. Van Tonder said to him was, if I recall correctly, is that based on the advice from the attorneys, he's not allowed to meet with him at that point in time. So he actually delayed that meeting in order for Mr. Watson to see the seriousness about this whole the text message to the audit partner.
Yes, and do you have any other further information in respect of this text message?
No, that's all.
In the paragraph following, you deal with your interactions, or rather allegations that you say Mr. Agrizzi made. What allegations are you speaking of there?
That's paragraph 27.
Yes.
Mr. Agrizzi, when he testified, he said that January of that year, 2018, I didn't want to whistleblow anymore, which weren't correct because we still had contact, and I've stipulated that in 27.1, 2, and 3,
Yes.
where I still had contact with Mr. Agrizzi for still a 3 or 4 month period.
And before you deal with the contact with Mr. Agrizzi, did you at any point turn against Mr. Agrizzi?
Yes, in April 2018, Bosasa approached me, and Chair, I think they've monitored my phone calls. They knew I was talking to Mr. Agrizzi, and yes, so
Yes.
I terminated all communication in April 2018 with Mr. Agrizzi.
Now, before terminating all communication with Mr. Agrizzi, you've just testified that you were still in communication with Mr. Agrizzi as of January of 2018.
Correct.
What was the nature of your communication or interaction with Mr. Agrizzi?
He would explain to me the processes that he explained to me per the flow diagram, that he's busy with negotiations with Bosasa in taking over the DCS contract. So he kept me up to date as to what the progress were in that regard.
And the month that followed, in February 2018, did you interact with Mr. Agrizzi?
Yes, Mr. Agrizzi still had contact with various people still working at Bosasa. They would leak him information. He told me that, but he didn't specify any names. He wanted in February 2018 from me. He knew I was busy doing the provisional tax of the group, and he wanted some financial information. So I still had contact with him in February.
Yes. And this information that he wanted from you, what information was it? Can you be specific?
Financial information. He wanted to know what kind of turnover and what kind of profits the company was showing.
When you say the company, can you please be specific? Which
The
company?
Bosasa Group.
Did you provide him with this information?
Very limited. I said to him that, I think they're not trusting me fully, so they don't want to disclose. They're just giving me some figures through. I don't have access to all the information I used to have.
Yes, and do you know whether Mr. Agrizzi ever came into contact with this information he requested from you?
Yes, I only gave him a little bit of information, but not too much.
And from any other person, do you know if he received this information?
Not financial information, but he did mention to me that people are leaking information to him because, just to elaborate on that, you would know where Mr. Watson was, where he's going to, who he's meeting with. He actually knew exactly what was going on as if he was still employed at Bosasa.
And this information he knew not from you?
No, not from me. I also didn't have access to that kind of information.
And in the month following, did you have any interaction with Mr. Agrizzi?
Surely I must have had some communication with him in March. Can't recall what happened there, but in April something did happen. So.
Yes, what happened in April? This would be April of 2018, is that correct?
2018.
Yes, what happened in April 2018?
Chair, Mr. Agrizzi, some people leaked invoices to Mr. Agrizzi, and Mr. Agrizzi was very suspicious of those invoices, and he sent it to me via text message. Can't remember whether it was WhatsApp or Telegram or whatever, but he sent me those invoices that was leaked to him, and he wanted me to print those invoices and I had to put it in an envelope. And I had to take it to Mr. Watson on that Friday. It was a Friday. And I had to explain to Mr. Watson that those invoices, somebody delivered those an envelope anonymously at my office with those invoices in the envelope. If I can carry on, I actually said to him that let's rather leave it for the following week, but he insisted that I take it on that Friday. And when I took it to Mr. Watson, he was really, really upset about information that was leaked out.
Yes, before we get to Mr. Watson, what nature of information or to whom did these invoices relate?
It related to some security company that rendered a service to the Bosasa group. It also turned out that there was nothing untoward about the invoices.
Do you know why Mr. Agrizi wanted these invoices?
It leaked out to him and he didn't know the supplier, so he was very suspicious of that. And he wanted to make a point to Mr. Watson that he's aware of that.
Yes, now you say that these invoices were leaked to Mr. Agrizi. Do I have that correctly?
Correct.
And you just earlier testified that Mr. Watson found out. Is that correct?
Yes, because I took it to him.
You took what to him?
I took the envelope to Mr. Watson.
And how did you get a hold of this envelope?
I had to print the invoices, I had to put it into the envelope, and I had to tell Mr. Watson that the envelope was delivered anonymously at my office.
So if I understand it correctly, you printed these invoices and delivered them to Mr. Watson on instruction of Mr. Agrizi?
Correct.
And do you recall when about this happened?
It was in April, and it was a Friday, Chair, April 2018.
And in you delivering these invoices to Mr. Watson, did Mr. Agrizi give any specific instruction in your delivery of the invoices?
No, he just wanted me to hand over the invoices to show Mr. Watson there's a leak.
And did you show Mr. Watson the envelope?
I did.
And what did you say to Mr. Watson when you gave him the envelope?
I told him, as was asked by Mr. Agrizi, that the invoices was delivered anonymously at my office.
And what did Mr. Watson say?
Got really upset when he opened up the envelope and he saw what's inside.
And what was your reaction to Mr. Agrizi's instruction that you must deliver this invoice, or this envelope of invoices rather, to Mr. Watson?
I really didn't want to do it. I actually still wanted to delay the delivery of the invoices, but he insisted, no, it has to be done on that Friday. So I didn't want to do it, but he used me to do it.
And during this period, were you still employed with Darcy Herman?
Correct.
As a tax consultant?
Yes.
What then happened after you showed Mr. Watson these invoices?
Mr. Watson called in Mr. Louis Pisano, who took over from Mr. Andries van Tonder, and he showed him that, and they both were very upset. And when I left, Mr. Watson called me on the Friday afternoon, and he asked me to come and see him on the Monday morning, the following Monday morning. And when I arrived there, a few of the board members were sitting there, senior management, and also the gentleman whose company it was who rendered that service. Mr. Watson wanted to show me that the person is alive. There's nothing untoward about the invoices.
Now, do you know why the people you mentioned were upset when they saw the invoices?
Because first of all, I proved to them that there's a leak. People are sending invoices out to somebody, but they knew it was Mr. Agrizi. And secondly, they knew that he thought that there's something untoward about the invoices, which weren't the case.
Now, why would they be upset about the leak of invoices? Is it the leak itself, or what was reflected on the invoices?
The Bosasa group wanted to eliminate the risk of people leaking information out to Mr. Agrizi. They were suspicious of that, and this confirmed that people were leaking information out.
And you say you can't recall to which company the invoice related?
No, unfortunately not.
Now, before we deal with Mr. Watson's reaction, why did you act on Mr. Agrizi's instruction?
Because at that point in time, I still had contact with him, and I've signed this agreement. And he actually used that against me, that saying that, listen, you've now signed this, and I had no choice to carry out instruction from Mr. Agrizzi.
You've just said signed the agreement.
In December 2018,
Are you referring to the statement or?
The first statement I've signed in December 2018, and he used that. He said, okay, you're part of this now, this is what you need to do. You would call instructions.
Yes, then.
I'm sorry. When you gave evidence about when you signed that statement on the 18th of December, I wanted you to ask a question, but it slipped my mind. And I'm going to interrupt just what we are dealing with now because I don't want to forget. Before, or where were you when you signed that statement?
Chair, I was on holiday in Mossel Bay in that December of 2018.
And did you sign it in your house? Did you sign it at a police station? Where did you sign it?
Mr. Agrizzi explained to me what I should do. I had no facility, so I had to go to a printing facility. And I've printed the statement there, and I went to the police station where I commissioned the statement. Went back to the printing business where I scanned and emailed the document back to Mr. Agrizzi.
Yes, and how long had you had it before you signed it?
If I recall correctly, Chair, when he emailed it to me on that morning of the 18th, I immediately printed that, signed it, and just get it out of the way. Same day.
I take it you read it before you signed it?
Chair, I did it that morning. I did quickly go through it, and I did sign it. Yes.
Yes. And did you at that stage realize that there were things that you may not have agreed with, or is that something you discovered later?
I realized that he did change some of the wording, and he did add some information into the agreement.
Yes.
I did realize that.
But you went ahead and signed
I went
it?
ahead.
Yes.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Millefer, you can proceed.
Thank you, Chair. You earlier stated that Mr. Watson called you to come into the office on the following Monday.
Correct.
Did you go and see Mr. Watson on that following Monday?
Yes, I did.
What happened?
That's where we introduced me. Some of the board members and senior management was present, as well as the person to whom that company belonged to whom those invoices were issued from.
And what was the purpose of that Monday meeting?
Mr. Watson wanted to show me that there's nothing untoward about the invoices, and that the person is real and alive, sitting across the table.
And why did Mr. Watson want to show you that?
He wanted to make a point. Don't know why, but he really went out of his way with having all the people there to show me there's nothing wrong. But it's also the morning where the internal risk advisor questioned me about when last I had communication with Mr. Agrizzi. So I think it was a multi-purpose meeting that was called that morning.
So when you were questioned, and we'll come to that, about when last you had interaction with Mr. Agrizzi, was this at the Monday meeting or on Friday when you delivered the envelope?
I still had a telephone conversation with Mr. Agrizzi that Monday morning.
No, when you were asked. Were you asked on Monday morning whether you have communication with Mr. Agrizzi, or on Friday?
No, the Monday morning.
Yes, you earlier stated that Mr. Watson wanted to prove a point. What point do you think he was trying to prove?
To show me that there's nothing untoward about those invoices that was leaked out.
Why would he want to
Because he knew
make
it
a point
came
to
from
you?
Mr. Agrizzi.
Okay, please allow me to finish so that we don't overlap and the transcript is properly recorded. I'm going to repeat my question. Why would he want to make that point to you?
To show me that the person is real and alive, and there's nothing untoward about the invoices.
Do you think he suspected that you thought that these invoices were fraudulent or were not for services actually rendered?
Yes, Chair.
You think that's what he was thinking?
That's what he was thinking.
Yes, and do you know why he would have thought that that's what you thought about these invoices?
Yes. That's, I think, the point he wanted to make, to show Mr. Gritzi and me that there's nothing untoward about it, that it's real.
Yes, okay.
Thank you, Chair. Now, you say that he wanted to show you and Mr. Agritzi that this invoice was real. Why would he want to show Mr. Agritzi through you, or to prove this point?
Because they knew that the invoices was leaked to him, and that I had still communication with Mr. Gritzi. I think that was the purpose.
But if I understood your evidence earlier, the envelope and the invoices were supposed to be made to look as though they were leaked to you. Is that correct?
Anonymously delivered at my office, yes.
So why would they then have any thought of Mr. Agritzi's
They
involvement?
knew it was he had a hand into this whole thing.
And
They were suspecting it.
And why would they, did they at any point question your interaction with Mr. Agritzi in respect of the invoices?
Yes, that Monday morning, they knew that he must have sent it to me, not delivered anonymously. So yes,
And what makes you think that they knew this?
I think they were monitoring my telephone calls, because they asked me there and then, and I knew the way they handled that meeting, that I knew they knew I still had contact with Mr. Agritzi.
And what makes you think that they knew that you still had contact with Mr. Agritzi?
Because they've asked me.
Now, you say that the internal risk auditor asked you when last you had contact with Mr. Agritzi. Is that correct?
Correct.
And what was your response?
Then I acknowledged that I do have contact with him.
What then happened?
Then they questioned me, where's my loyalty? I had to make a decision on that day as to where's my loyalty, and they allowed me one opportunity to make a decision whether my loyalty was with them or not, and whether they would remove or take away the audit from our company. So later that afternoon, I had to get back to them to inform them that my loyalty is with them, and that we could carry on with the relationship.
And did you have to do anything to prove your loyalty to Mr. Watson?
At that point in time, no, Chair. I think they were constantly monitoring my calls and my whereabouts. That's the impression I got. But since then, I never had contact with him anymore. I told him that to secure the audit, not to lose the audit.
And in drafting the second statement, you were not trying to prove your loyalty to Mr. Watson?
Prove my loyalty to nobody, Chair.
So Mr. Watson just took your word that you would be loyal to him. Do I understand it correctly?
You're right. Although they accepted that, things did change. They didn't really trust me anymore the way they used to trust me. So it was okay, and we carried on, but I just did my job.
Was it like it's okay, but we'll be watching you?
Yes, that it was almost like this is what's going to happen now.
So in the state of, and to use the chair's words, it's okay, but we'll be watching you. The payments that would be made through Miato at the instruction of Mr. Watson, did that continue?
No, that ended. The last payment was, it was only the 3 payments, these 3 entities.
Yes. Now, what did you say to Mr. Agritzi, if anything?
At what point?
Following your Monday meeting with Mr. Watson and your loyalty having been put in question, and you having stated that your loyalty was with Mr. Watson?
Chair, since that morning, on my way to Busasa's offices, that was my last communication with Mr. Agritzi. Never spoken to him ever again, up until now.
And how did Mr. Agritzi react to that?
He didn't, he was obviously very furious, because then he started threatening me via anonymous email addresses which he created. And
what was the nature of Mr. Agritzi's threats?
He created some email address called PS Venter Leaks. I've got the email, PS Venter Leaks at pm.me. And he would send emails to my firm, my employer. He would send emails to SAICA and URBA and to various other people about me, threatening me, you need to come clean now, otherwise the following would happen. So he started victimizing me through these emails that he created.
Well, so when would have been the last occasion that you spoke to Mr. Agrizi?
The morning of that meeting at Bosasa in April 2018.
And what was the gist of that discussion between the two of you?
Mr. Agrizi would call everybody, myself, Mr. Van Tonder, Frans Forster. He would call everybody every morning and every afternoon just to find out how you are, what happened, who are you going to see, what are you going to do at Bosasa. He would try and get information from me.
Oh, okay. So there's nothing of any significance that you can remember about the discussion. So on that morning, did you know you were going to meet with Mr. Watson?
Your mic is off, Mr. Fenton.
Sorry. Yes, Chair. I told him about it.
Yes. And what was his reaction to you going to meet Mr. Watson?
I had to come back to him because I told him on the Friday afternoon after delivering of the invoices that Mr. Watson called me, and that he wants to see me on the Monday morning.
Yes.
So Mr. Agrizi was very curious as to what's happening that Monday morning.
Yes, yes. After the meeting, you didn't call him?
I didn't call him, I didn't take his calls.
Yes.
And I never spoken to him again.
Okay, and you say he made threats, but you did not make any contact with him?
No, I didn't.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, now, in respect of the threats, you were explaining to the chair the nature of the threats that were made by Mr. Agrizi through this email address, which you have cited as psfenterleaks@pm.me. What were the nature of the threats by Mr. Agrizi?
Chair, it was, I think I've attached one of the emails where he says that he circulated emails to SAICA, to IRBA and those, the controlling bodies of auditors and accountants. We said that you better come clean, you need to disclose whatever. He wanted me to really to expose Mr. Watson.
But you had signed the statement he wanted you to sign by now, isn't it? And he had a copy of it.
Correct, Chair.
Did he insist on the original? Did he ask you to give him the original?
I never gave him the original, Chair.
But did he ask for it?
He never asked for it.
Okay, but as at the time of that meeting that Monday with Mr. Watson, he already had this statement with him?
Yes, he did.
Yes. Okay. Do you think subsequently the fact that you didn't come back to him and tell me how the meeting went with Mr. Watson that Monday morning made him think that you had changed your mind about your statement and about going through with being part of his group?
Correct, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. And did Mr. Agrizi do anything further other than these threats through this email address that you've spoken about?
Chair, yes. He sent various emails, and during August, he leaked my unsigned agreement via this email address. And then towards the end of August 2018, he emailed the signed affidavit to my employer. So he actually carried out eventually the threat that he's going to expose me about this affidavit that I've done in December.
In the meantime, had you kept your employer informed of your interactions with Mr. Agrizi and that you had been asked to sign a statement and that you had signed it and all of that?
No, Chair. I didn't inform them about
it.
No.
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Now, in your Mr. Watson rather inquiring into your loyalty, was there any payment made by Mr. Watson to you, or any payment in that respect, insofar as your loyalty to him?
No, no payment.
So when last did you speak to Mr. Watson?
Since Mr. Agrizzi released my signed statement in August 2018,
August 2018.
August 2018, I was at the time suspended, and I was asked not to have any contact with Bosasa or the directorate or Mr. Watson, and ever since I had no communication. Let's call it early September. I had no communication with anybody at Bosasa.
So were you suspended following the leaking of the statement or before?
Correct. Following the signed statement that was sent by Mr. Agrizzi to my employer.
And what then happened thereafter?
In September, I resigned.
You resigned from Darcy Herman?
From Darcy Herman, yes.
When you say September, is it September 2018?
2018, correct.
And post-September 2018, has there been any other further interaction between yourself and Mr. Agrizzi?
No further communication, interaction.
And between yourself and Mr. Andrew van Donner?
No further interaction.
And between yourself and Mr. Watson, you said there was none?
None. I can put on record that Mr. Watson tried to call me twice last week, at the beginning of last week, but I didn't take the calls.
Did Mr. Watson by any chance leave a message?
Yes, he said to me, please call me back. This is my new number.
And did you return the message?
No, I didn't.
And you say you didn't return the call?
No calls returned.
Now, in the following paragraphs of your statement, you deal with further payments that were made to several persons. And in your approach in dealing with these statements, you deal with the remainder parts of the first statement. Can we now turn to paragraph 30 on page 14 of Exhibit T10? With reference to the first statement, you pick up from paragraph 5 of your statement, of the first statement rather, pardon me, Chair, that appears under Exhibit S8, and that appears at page AA924. Are you there, Mr. Fenter?
Yes.
Can you please read into the record the contents of paragraph 5 of this first statement?
Over the years, I've built up a good relationship with Tony Perry, Andries van Tonder, Gavin Watson, Jacques van Zyl, Carlos Bonifacia, and all the directors and other employees of the Bosasa Group. Gavin Watson realized this and wanted me to get more involved in the business in the form of a consultant from an external point of view. I was therefore not just a tax consultant for the Bosasa Group.
Do you confirm the truthfulness of the statement?
That's correct.
And is there anything further that you would like to bring to the Chair's attention in this respect?
No.
What then follows is paragraph 7, still on 924. Do you confirm that on the first statement there is no paragraph 6?
Correct.
The next paragraph that follows is 7. Can you please read that into the record?
Although I had to attend to the normal duties of a tax consultant, Gavin Watson wanted more from me. Gavin Watson informed all the directors that I'll be handling the annual personal tax returns and the company will pay for the services. I was also instructed to do the annual tax returns of Patrick Gillingham and the annual tax return of Lyndon T.
Yes, now the first part of that paragraph, do you confirm the truthfulness that you had to attend to the normal duties of a tax consultant?
Yes, correct.
And do you confirm, is it true, as the sentence continues, that Gavin Watson wanted more from you?
Correct.
And in this respect, reference is made firstly to Gavin Watson having informed all the directors that you will be handling their annual personal tax returns and that the company will pay for the service. Is this true?
True.
Now, with reference to all the directors, which directors were these? Are these directors of Bosasa?
Yes, directors of Bosasa.
And you say it's correct that the payment, the company, is this Bosasa?
Correct.
That the company will pay for the service?
Correct.
And what follows then is that you were instructed to do the annual tax return of Patrick Gillingham. Is this correct?
That's correct.
And can you recall during which period you had to attend to the tax returns of Patrick Gillingham?
I just want to check here. If I've got it correctly, Chair, it's from 2012 onwards.
Can I refer you to paragraph 32 of your second statement? That is where you deal in detail with the contents of paragraph 7 of the first statement.
Yes, thank you.
Do you want to refresh your memory in so far as the period?
Yes, I've got it down there as from 2012 onwards.
Yes, and in the first statement, it continues to say that you also had to do the annual tax return of Linda Mt. Is this correct?
That's correct.
And can you recall for what period you had to do the annual tax returns of Mt?
2013 onwards.
And do you know why you had to do, firstly, the annual tax returns of the directors of BSASA?
Mr. Gavin Watson wanted all of the directors to be compliant, so he wanted to centralize all the person who does all their tax returns, and it was referred to me, so yes.
And did you attend to these tax consultant duties on behalf of Darcy Herman or in your personal capacity?
No, on behalf of Darcy Herman.
And in respect of the annual tax return of Mr. Patrick Gillingham, do you know why you had to personally attend to this?
They introduced me, Mr. Gritzi and Mr. Watson introduced me to him and to Mr. Linda Mti, and they've instructed me to assist the two gentlemen to do their tax returns.
And who were the two gentlemen introduced as?
They were just introduced as normal people. But when I heard the names, I realized what their past history were about.
And what is their past history?
They were both employees at the Department of Correctional Services.
So when they were introduced to you, did you know of the nature of their affiliation, if any, with BSASA?
Not at the time, other than I knew that there was a SIU case where the two gentlemen's names were mentioned, and I did ask them about it. And as per my statement, they explained to me that the case, nothing came from the case, nothing is going to come from the case, and they also explained to me something about the case was thrown out because of fruits of a poison tree or something. That was the terminology that was used, so I did the tax returns.
Who paid for your handling of the services of the taxes of Mr. MT and Mr. Gillingham?
It was included in the fee of the tax returns of the directors, Chair. I just included two more. I've sent a single invoice annually to BSASA, say for example, 40,000 rand, and that would include all the directors, but also the two gentlemen. These as well.
Okay.
So when you included the fees of Mr. Gillingham and Mr. Mti, you say that you included their fees and the fees of directors, correct?
Part of that invoice included that, so I didn't charge them separately.
So, if I understand it correctly, the invoice in respect of the directors was inflated to incorporate the services that Darcy would have provided in respect of Mr. Gillingham and Mr. Mti.
It was a fixed fee which included everything, and that was also included. But I suppose if you want to break it down, it's included there.
Well, on the invoice, what was indicated on the invoice?
Completion of tax returns of directors and senior management, I think.
Now, Mr. Gillingham and Mr. Mti, were they directors
No.
of BSASA?
Not at all.
So was there any reason why the fees in respect of the tax returns of Mr. Gillingham and Mr. Mti were concealed, it would seem?
All I was told is just to include it into the fee of all the directors and recover it via the invoice for the directors' tax returns. So I included the two gentlemen.
Told by who?
Told by, if I remember correctly, all my instructions came from Gavin Watson.
Now, you earlier said that you were aware that the two gentlemen were previously with the Department of Correctional Services. Did you at any point express any concern over the manner in which you were invoicing and incorporating Mr. Gillingham and Mr. Mtee into the invoice?
No, I didn't. Mr. Watson just told me how to do it, and I've done it in order to recover the fees.
Well, yes, but in your own mind, with the knowledge of where the background of the gentleman, as you've put it, did you not find it strange that you are concealing payments for tax consultancy services?
Yes, but if I can just elaborate, the invoice didn't specify all the names of all the directors. It was just a single liner explaining, and as a result of that, that was included. But yes.
Yes, I understand that and I accept it, but my point really is, did you not find it strange that, firstly, you've testified that you were aware that Mr. Gillingham and Mr. Mtee were not directors of BSASA, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So did you not find it strange that they are being included in this?
It's strange. It's strange.
Did you question this?
Yes, but I was merely told by Mr. Watson to include it, and why do you question it if you recover your fee? Why do you worry?
Yes. And did you have any discussion with anyone in respect of the, firstly, tax consultancy of Mr. Gillingham and Mr. Mtee?
I didn't discuss it with anybody. I kept it confidential.
And in respect of the inclusion of the fees that you would be charging for the two, Mr. Gillingham and Mr. Mtee, did you have any discussion with anyone?
No. They knew that because they never paid me, so they must have known that it was paid on their behalf.
Yes. Is there anything that you would like to bring to their attention in this respect?
No, that's all.
You then deal in paragraph 33 of your second statement with another company. Can you specify which company you're dealing with there?
It's a company called Leonora Investments. If I remember correctly, many years ago when my firm's name was still Best of Fully Incorporated, we received an instruction from Mr. Tony Perry, who was the company secretary at BSASA at the time. He wanted some assistance through our company secretarial side to register or to do some amendments to a company called Leonora Investments. Only later on, when Mr. Adrian Besson came to inspect all the share registers and all of that, we realized that this company entity belonged to Mr. Linda Mtee.
Okay, before you deal with the second part of your evidence, you've just stated that Leonora Investments pertain to when Darcy Herman was still Best of Fully, is this correct?
Yeah.
So can you recall what year this was in?
Many years ago, 2006, 2007, 2008. Chair, it was a long time ago, 10, 11, 12 years ago.
Okay, in your evidence earlier, you say that Best of Fully eventually changed to Darcy Herman sometime in 2009. Well, it changed to one name in 2009 and then later in 2013.
Yes.
So it would be during a period that precedes the year 2009, is that correct?
Yeah.
Because that's when it was still referred to as Best of Fully.
Yes.
Yes. You were then explaining how this entity was associated with Mr. Mtee.
Correct.
In what manner?
That with the little bit of knowledge I have about it, Chair, I think Mr. Mtee was, I can't remember, was the company or CC? He was the member or the director of that company.
Yes, and you've just testified that Best of Fully was instructed to do the registration of the company.
Correct.
Now, can you recall what the nature of business that this company was to conduct?
That was the only time I heard the company's name, never heard about it ever again going forward.
Do you know why you were instructed, Bester Viljoen rather, was at that point instructed to register the company?
I don't have any knowledge about it, Chair.
Do you know what the company was used for?
Not at all.
Did you have any involvement in the company, whether it be as auditing or for any payment purposes?
Can't recall we doing anything else other than just registering the company.
Yes, and Bester Viljoen, as it was known then, did it register any other companies for any other persons? Can you recall?
No, only for the Bosasa Group, but nothing for people on their behalf. Nothing I can remember.
Now, do you know whether Mr. Mti was aware of the registration of this company?
No idea, Chair, no idea.
Did you ever meet him during the registration process?
Nothing at all, only in 2013.
So in registering the company, what documents did you rely on?
Chair, I don't have any knowledge about it as I was not involved in that process.
Thank you. Can we revert back to Exhibit S8 at page 924, paragraph 8? Can you please read paragraph 8 into the record?
At the beginning of 2016, Gavin Watson approached me to take over Consultancy Business Consultants Pty Limited, a company which belonged to Dr. Jurgen Smith. Dr. Smith was diagnosed with cancer and wanted to exit the company as soon as he could. Consultancy is a labor broker company who employs people for the Bosasa group of companies.
You've dealt with this earlier. Now, in respect of this particular paragraph in this statement, do you confirm the truthfulness of that?
Correct.
And the following paragraph, paragraph 9, you have already dealt with. Can you then turn over to page A925? Paragraph 10 of Exhibit S8. Can you please read into the record the contents of paragraph 10?
Hasn't he dealt with that?
We've dealt
as
with
well?
that.
He has dealt with that.
Oh, pardon, Chair, I did
Yeah,
not.
all of this. Yeah.
My apologies, Chair.
And the next paragraph.
Yes. Thank you, Chair.
And paragraph 12, he has dealt with it.
Yes. As well as paragraph 13.
I think, and 13 as well.
Yes, and 14. Do you confirm that? Do you confirm that you've dealt with paragraph
Yes,
14?
correct, I
The
agree.
paragraph that then follows is paragraph 15 of the first statement as appears on page A927 under Exhibit S8. Can you please read that paragraph into the record?
Paragraph 15, Gavin Watson asked me to assist Lindy Gous on many occasions, from calming her down to getting her to focus. One of the tasks he instructed me to do was to register a company called the Exchange Space Pty Limited. The purpose of the company is to do the marketing and branding of the Bosasa African Global Group. Over and above the monthly salary I had to now pay Lindy Gous a gross salary of 42,000 Rand a month in order to clear a net amount of 24,000 Rand. This amount had to go towards Mrs. Gous' bond repayment, brackets 1 million Rand bond repayment over 10 years, just estimated, close brackets. Proof of the pay slip is attached. I want to emphasize the fact that the salary from the Exchange Space Pty Limited was purely for the bond repayment, as Ms. Gous gets paid from Consultancy Business Consultants for her services. Her monthly cost to the company was 137,717 Rand.
And are the contents of this statement correct, of this paragraph correct?
Is correct?
And is there anything further in this respect that you wish to bring to the attention of the Chair?
Nothing else?
Can we then turn to...
Well, is this paragraph correct?
Yes, correct, Chair.
It is correct, okay. Yes, you may continue.
Thank you, Chair. And can we then move on to paragraph 16 of Exhibit S8, still at page A927? Can you please read the content of that paragraph into the record?
I would complain that this practice was incorrect and morally disturbing, but Gavin Watson threatened that my services and those of my company will be terminated. I had to do what was asked from me, or else what happened to so many would happen to me.
And are the contents of this paragraph correct?
One would follow instructions from Gavin Watson, yes, Chair.
Okay, is the entire paragraph correct or not?
Correct?
And what would be the cause of your complaint here?
Mr. Gavin Watson, even if he gives you an instruction, you don't dare going against him, you just carry out instruction. You follow instruction.
You talk about this practice. Well, you've just confirmed the correctness of this paragraph, and it talks about the practice being incorrect and morally disturbing. Why did you say that?
Yes, what practice are you talking about there?
Chair, I think this paragraph was inserted by Mr. Gritzi, but for me to elaborate on that, that's why I've commented that if Gavin Watson gives you an instruction, you carry it out.
Yeah, but is that can't be the practice that you're talking about. The practice you're talking about in that first line must be something else.
Chair, no, that's why I'm saying this paragraph was inserted by Mr. Gritzi. It's not my wording.
Yes, but you remember you were asked whether the paragraph is correct. I know it's been a long day, but you must tell me if there's something that you don't agree with in paragraphs that are in what you have referred to as your first statement, because in your second statement you did identify paragraphs that were not entirely correct. So when we deal with the first affidavit, it's important to know which ones you are happy with, which ones you might not be happy with. So in paragraph 16, the reference to the practice there, do you understand what practice is being referred to?
I think the practice refers to, Chair, that instructions from Gavin Watson. If he tells you to do something, then you would do it. For example, in the previous paragraph, we had to pay Ms. Lindighaus an additional amount. That's basically an instruction. You've got to carry it out. So the practice I think I'm referring to there was that it's all instructions from Mr. Gavin Watson. You have to.
Well, that I don't think that sounds logical to me. In paragraph 16, which you confirmed was correct, you set out what Mr. Gavin instructed you to do. And in the last of those two paragraphs, which are under 15, paragraph 15, you say instructed you to make certain payments. And then at the beginning of paragraph 16, you start the paragraph by saying you would complain that this practice was incorrect and morally disturbing. So this practice must refer to something you have just referred to above. And in paragraph 15, you don't refer, or the only practice I can think of is instructions about payments, the payments that you are being made to make. So I'm making a distinction between the instruction and the actual activity that you are instructed to do. My understanding is that the reference to practice is a reference to the activity of making payments. But does that accord with your understanding, or
Chair,
does
you're
it not
right.
accord?
No, you're right, Chair. I just paged back,
Yes.
and yeah,
Yes.
it refers to
Yes.
everything that happened prior to this paragraph, yes.
Yes.
The making of payments, all of that, yes.
Yes, but if that understanding of the reference to practice is correct, the next question is, what was wrong with being asked to engage in those activities, in making those payments?
Chair,
Because that first sentence suggests that it's wrong. That activity referred to above is wrong, which is the making of those payments.
making of those payments.
Yeah, what was wrong? Was there something wrong with being asked to make those payments?
Chair, I think it's based on the instructions and the fact that Mr. Watson didn't have an office, he didn't have a secretary, he didn't have a computer, so he would make use of people to carry out, to do certain things for him. That's the kind of practice. That's why I had to make the payments as well.
Or so, is it, in other words, was your complaint therefore related to the nature of the tasks that he was asking you to do? Was it something you thought somebody else should be doing it for him?
Yes, Chair. I think, basically, I think you've summarized it correctly, that it's the way, the paragraphs prior to this paragraph where instructions was given and where payments had to be made, and Mr. Watson, conveniently not having an office or a secretary or a computer, would make use of people. He would use people to carry out instructions to do certain things.
Okay, so must we take it therefore that that first sentence of paragraph 16, that complaint by you refers to being instructed to perform those duties?
Yes.
Okay.
But Mr. Fenter, if your complaint was the instruction to perform those duties, then why would you find it to be morally disturbing? In addition to it being incorrect, as you've cited, you further say it was morally disturbing.
Although you don't want to do things, Chair, if Gavin Watson gives you an instruction, you have to carry it out. You can't argue. I think that's what I'm trying to explain.
Well, I think Ms. Molefe is focusing on the phrase you use, morally disturbing. It's like you are saying there's something morally wrong that he asked you to do.
Yeah, it's strong wording, Chair. I agree. But I just wanted to make the point that, you know, if he asks you to do something, then you have to do it, you know. Whether you're comfortable with that or not, if he asks you, you can't say no. You can't go against him.
But do you want to stand by that sentence as it is, or do you say you would have preferred it to read differently in terms of describing what your complaint was?
I think so, Chair. Maybe I write it, explain it differently.
How would you articulate your complaint now?
Definitely not feeling comfortable carrying out the instructions, because, you know, more in that sense that based on very little information, Gavin Watson would expect from you to do certain things without really explaining it to you. Whether you agree or disagree, you have to do it.
Okay.
Okay, can I, and without belaboring the point, Chair, can I refer you to your second statement, which appears, paragraph 39, which appears at page 17. There you elaborate your reference to paragraph 16 of this first statement. Can you explain to the Chair, firstly, well, can you first confirm that in paragraph 39, you confirmed the correctness of paragraph 16 of the first statement?
Yes.
And can you explain to the Chair the basis for which you confirm the correctness of the statement, of this paragraph, rather?
Chair, there, on my statement now, I've tried to explain that the instructions that you wouldn't dare going against Mr. Watson, that you would terminate your service, or, you know, he would just push you to the side and ignore you. So that's the point I wanted to make, and I've actually elaborated that.
Yes, and you've earlier confirmed that the reference that you were making was in your first statement was in relation to the previous transactions for which you had to make payments. Now, as I have it from at least 5 preceding paragraphs, the transactions relate to the legal costs of Mr. Hlaudi Motsoeneng, The second relates to the 3 payments to Morocco Consultants. The transaction that follows is the payment towards the purchase of the residential property of Ms. Lindy Gous. Followed by that is the payment of 500,000 to what has been described as EFG2, which you say was for the Andile Ramaphosa Trust. And the payment that then follows after that is in relation to Ms. Lindy Gous. At paragraph 14, again, there's reference to the payment of 500,000 in respect of the Andile Ramaphosa Foundation, as you say you were told. And following that is the payment again to Ms. Lindy Gous, which you've spoken about. Now, are you sticking with your evidence? Because earlier the chair asked you that in your use of the term morally disturbing, were you making any reference to any, and I'm not going to quote the chair, but any moral wrongfulness around these payments?
I think maybe those are strong words. I can perhaps rephrase it by saying what I've said in paragraph 16 in my new statement. I would then amend those wording.
Okay, thank you. Chair, there are further transactions that will be dealt with in the remaining parts of Mr. Fenter's affidavit in relation to both subsidiaries and persons affiliated to BOSASA. But I do see that it's just after 4. It's 4:10 on my watch. I don't know if this would be a convenient time to adjourn.
It looks like we shouldn't take too long before we finish with him. I don't know what your estimate is. I would rather let us finish with him if we can, because I wouldn't like, in the light of what Mr. Pretorius is going to tell me in due course when you are done, I wouldn't like tomorrow to come only for a short time to the hearing. So I don't know what's your estimate of
My
how much more
estimation
time?
is roughly 2 hours, Chair. Shouldn't be longer than 2 hours.
Let me ask Mr. Pretorius.
Certainly.
Mr. Pretorius, how does
Chair, in
tomorrow
ordinary
look like?
circumstances, we would consider that convenient, but the problem is that there are other matters of preparation to be dealt with this afternoon to ensure that Thursday happens. And those
To
are
ensure
quite
that?
critical. Thursday happens. The issue of notices,
Yes.
the finalization of Thursday's statement,
Yes.
about which I'm concerned at the moment.
Yes,
that
no,
I
but-
need to go back and deal with.
No, but you could be released.
Well, then, that's fine.
You could be released if we were to continue. But if it's going to be 2 hours, I thought maybe it would be about an hour, and then we could go on up to until 5. If Ms. Mlefe's estimate that we need 2 hours, that would take us to 6, so maybe we should then just adjourn to tomorrow.
As you
But,
please, Chair.
but if we, I hope her estimate is close. Otherwise, I would have preferred to finish.
I would
But
prefer to.
other than well, tomorrow we were supposed to have a witness who understand has got to be somewhere to be somewhere else, or what's the position?
Yes, he's got to appear in court tomorrow.
He has got to appear in court
Yes,
tomorrow.
it's
So
public knowledge that it's Mr. Agrizi
Mr. Akrizi, yeah. So he's required to appear in court tomorrow.
tomorrow. Yes, Chair.
So we'll hear his evidence on Thursday.
Correct, Chair. There's another consideration. I would prefer not to leave whilst,
Yes,
because
okay.
it's all to do with
Yeah.
the evidence of BOSASA.
Okay, no, that's fine. I think then we may as well adjourn now then, and continue tomorrow. Yeah, no, that's fine.
Thank you, Chair.
Yesterday, you had indicated you were going to deal with Mrs. Masego's affidavit today. If you are ready, we can dispose of that, or otherwise we can also deal with it tomorrow, if you can remember, tomorrow morning.
It's a case of just in time, Chair.
Yes. Well, maybe if you are going to deal with, do you elect to deal with it now or tomorrow morning? It
Perhaps
doesn't
tomorrow
matter.
morning.
Yeah, maybe tomorrow morning. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
No, that's fine. Before we resume with the witness, but if possible, maybe so that his evidence in terms of the transcript is not interrupted after he has finished.
After the conclusion of his evidence.
After the conclusion of his evidence.
I'll do so then.
Yeah.
And there may be another statement to be handed up at the same time.
Yes, okay, no,
Thank
that's
you, Chair.
fine, that's fine. We will then adjourn until tomorrow, so come back tomorrow, Mr. Fenter. Tomorrow we will start at 10.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, we adjourn.